I thought I walked into a meeting with a CEO and I thought I knew everything I could about their business. And the first thing that came out of my mouth, he was like, yeah, that's just not what we do. And it was a terrible meeting from there. Trying to be the best, most knowledgeable, most valuable business advisor out of the gate is a pitfall.
Welcome back to the Logistics and Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Hastings, and with me today, I have Jeb Blount Jr. Jeb is the host of the top 200 business podcast called the Sales Gravy Podcast, is also the leader of all things marketing for the renowned sales training company, Sales Gravy, based out of Augusta, Georgia. Jeb and I had originally connected last year on social media or on LinkedIn about us potentially going to an event. I think it was the Outbound Conference in San Antonio. And then from there, I've been following you on social media or on LinkedIn. Huge fan of the podcast. You know, we're often sharing insights, strategies with our team from your guys' content to our small group of 10. And more than anything, man, I feel like we speak the same language in terms of sales, pipeline, activity metrics, and overall intent for our prospects and clients. For the record, Fanatical Prospecting is pretty much like our sales Bible. And that book I constantly go back to. It has, coffee stains all over it. I have it earmarked in a ton of different places. It's all marked up. Anytime that myself or our sales team is in a rut, I always feel like we go back to that, anytime that, we're in between setting up a new client. So Jeb, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and excited about how we can help sales professionals, have a loaded pipeline, close more deals, and have long-term partnerships with their clients.
I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day and having me on your show. I connected with you, I think last year, a year and a half ago around Outbound, but I do want to say that I followed your podcast because it's shot so well, it's done so well. Your team does an amazing job with the production side. So I connected you with about that as well. And then, just quick aside, like my favorite books in my house are the ones that I have thumbed through a million times. I've got these novels and these books like Fanatical Prospecting that are just completely stained. And I think there's something so I love books. I love reading, and one of my least favorite things is such like high reverence for the book itself, like the paper, that you don't dog ear it, you don't crumple the pages. Like I have such a reverence for the material that you should abuse books, because that's what they're for. The words are what matters, not the book itself. So if you have books at home that you feel like you got to hide on the shelf because you've read too many times, like put those out on the very front. Those are the ones that I want to see that you've read the most. That makes me proud on my bookshelf when I have the ones that are just completely ruined. So I'd love to hear that about Fanatical Prospecting in your bookshelf.
No, it's great, man. I think there's so many key points to it. And I think, whatever, you call me old school or call me old fashioned or whatever, but there's so many strategies in there, especially on the prospecting side, that I feel like are so good, and especially in our world. Now, we're a freight brokerage company. We connect, we're an intermediary. We connect the shippers, manufacturers with different trucking companies across the domestic United States. So, for us, sales is a big piece, and we have to convince these clients or prospects to do business with us versus whoever they're currently using today. So yeah, man, I know, Jeb Blount Sr. is your dad. So I'm sure that, you were trained and primed to be a masterful salesperson from the get-go. But tell me more of a time that things didn't go kind of the way that you wanted from a career perspective, and why.
All the time, Brian, every day.
Yeah.
Well, let me think of the one time that I can share. It's interesting. People say, well, your dad, you've been trained, and I grew up, I didn't want to be in sales.
Sure.
Like I never wanted to be a salesperson. I wanted to be a baseball player. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be an astronaut. I didn't, like, sales guy was not like top 5 on my list of things I wanted to do with my life. But you end up in business for many reasons. But a time that wasn't working out was I took a marketing internship because all of my buddies in my like house that I was living in college, they all had they were way smarter than me. I just loved being around them. They were so intelligent, made A+ on every single paper they wrote. Sure. They would walk into an exam for economics, like macroeconomics, and they just didn't even care. They didn't study, and they would, ace the exam, and I'm sweating, off my brow, just trying to figure out.
I hate those guys. I hate those guys.
It made me so angry, but they were so good at it, and I loved being around them because they made me smarter than what I was. And they all had internships, like they worked in different industries and finance and one guy was in politics, one guy's getting his PhD in frog eye biology. He worked at the Smithsonian over the summer,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what do
You
I
got a good
do?
network there, man. You got a good network.
It's a really cool network, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was bringing to the table.
Sure.
So I got this marketing internship, and I was moving papers back and forth and from the closet to out here, and then making prints and going to get coffee and going to get lunch. And it just wasn't what I thought that the guys that I was living with were kind of doing, and it just wasn't really working for me. And it clicked for me when we had these events. We would have these luncheons, and I was selling like real estate essentially. It was continuous care retirement facilities, and we were taking folks from like the Atlanta area, and they were moving up into a more rural area. They were in their 80s plus. I mean, the typical age around 82.
Yep.
$1.5 million net worth at minimum.
Sure.
And they were essentially selling all of their possessions, all their home, and then moving into a continuous care retirement facility, which took you from like retirement age into the end of your life. Biggest decision they were making, the last big decision they were essentially making. And I'm like 20, I'm like 19, I'm 20. I have no idea what to tell these people. They're telling me about their 401ks. I couldn't spell 401k.
What is that? What is that?
And so I was moving papers back and forth. We had these events and people just weren't showing up. We had 3 or so folks in the office. There were 2 salespeople, 1 manager, and it was me, the intern. There was a big corporate organization, so lots and lots of locations. And I realized that I had a big list of all of the potential people that we had brought in, we call them list leads, just emails and phone numbers. And so I was in this back closet, like literally my office was a closet. And, I just remember fanatical prospecting, and I had been quote unquote trained my entire life. And I think something clicked for me, just went, just call people. Just like I saw, when I was in economics 101 in college, we're really spending a lot of time in my early years. But this professor made me read this book. It's like lessons from dead entrepreneurs. I'd have to go look at the book again. But essentially entrepreneurship, the lesson of entrepreneurship was there's a gap in the market and you go fill it. So there's, Bank of America guy who was Bank of Italy, and he saw the people on the docks of San Francisco couldn't get bank accounts or weren't getting bank accounts and weren't getting loans, and the banks weren't taking them because they were Italian immigrants and they weren't doing, they weren't allowed to be in that space. And so he formed a bank, and he saw a gap and he filled it. And so I saw this gap that we weren't having people in seats. And so I just started calling people, them, typically older gentlemen. And I would just invite them to lunch. No's. Oh, you know how prospecting goes. But for the next 6 months, I had filled up every single luncheon every single week for the next 6 months by calling people. My boss couldn't figure it out why people were showing up. I hadn't said anything because I thought it was my job. I didn't really think anything of it. And eventually, I said, I was calling people, and she was not super happy with me. I think because I kind of overshadowed what they were doing and the obviously other workers. I don't exactly know what the politics of it. I was 20. I was not really paying attention to much, but other than getting a paycheck and going home and hanging out with my buddies. But I was doing this job, and I think that at that moment it kind of clicked for me that like, okay, I can move things. Like I have the power to move things. And that was the first example. And then later on, I learned like, okay, now I'm bringing these people in and I'm having these conversations, and they just love me because I was just asking them questions. I didn't know anything about their lives. I didn't know what retirement was like. I didn't even really, this was an internship. I didn't have my first real like formal job yet. And so I just didn't have anything to do but asking questions. And I think in that moment when my career was like, I'm going to be marketing or I'm going to go into business, and, I'm moving papers back and forth. Like this doesn't feel right. And then I started moving things, and business for me kind of clicked in that moment where I thought, okay, I can change directions here. Maybe sales isn't what I thought it was. And that's like the earliest example of a time in my life where things just weren't going the right direction, but I didn't exactly know what the right direction was. I just knew that this wasn't it.
Yeah, no, man, I love that story. And I feel like, you didn't really know what you were doing, but you stuck your neck out there. You went out and got your teeth kicked in a little bit. You got a ton of no's, and then you started having some success. You figured out what to say and inviting people into these sessions or these events. That's great, man. I love that. I feel like there's every entrepreneurial story or every sales story of any sales professional that has had great success. I always feel like there's those early years where, you hear so many stories about, oh, I was a sales professional and I was with this company for a year and I was put on a performance plan and I needed to meet my numbers, and then boom, right? It's like now there's a need, or there's something that clicks to like get them out, right? I love that part. I mean, even that I love the fact that you did that and your boss didn't really know. It's like, oh, well, what's going on? Like, what's that? Like to me, that makes it 10 times better that they didn't really know what was happening.
I didn't know I was supposed to say something. If you're listening to this, you say something.
Right. Well,
I didn't know that I was supposed to.
yeah, promote yourself a little bit. I feel like, work on that personal branding side a little bit. With our, with this generation and with the sales profession as a whole, right? There's always this fear, at least we see it on our side, especially with newer entry-level sales reps coming in. And one of the biggest things, even though they don't say it, and I think they can, talk up the interview process, like I'll make 1 million phone calls in a day. And then as soon as they sit down at that desk and they got this black box sitting there, there's something that happens. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the rejection piece and the fear of rejection. And why do you think it's so prevalent? And how do folks that are listening to this show today, how do they overcome that fear of, oh God, I actually have to dial this number? Some systems, we don't have this yet, but click to dial, or use an auto dialer or whatever they use. So let's talk about rejection a little bit and how people can overcome that.
Well, I want to highlight something that social media is such a toxic place, and I think that it's toxic for many reasons, but one of them, especially in the professional world, is and sales, B2B professional sales, is that you think that rejection is abnormal. Or the fear of rejection is abnormal.
Yeah.
That there's, you see the people who post on LinkedIn, and I'm guilty of it as well, and so are so many thought leaders, that we sort of have this like rose-tinted glasses around the fear of rejection. Oh, just get over it. We've all been there. And we make it sound so, I think lackadaisical in a way. Like we sort of project it as like, this is just something we all deal with, so get over it. But I want to, like, my take on the fear of rejection is that it's totally normal. It's a biological response.
Right.
It's not you, Brian Hastings, the moral human being, the person that your family loves, your children are excited to be around, that your parents raised and love, your mother loves with all of her heart. That person has nothing to do with the fear of rejection. That is a totally separate thing. The fear of rejection comes from the fact that we're social creatures and we grew up in societies. And if you are rejected, that means you're kicked out of society. And if you don't have social infrastructure, you get eaten by lions. Like, that's what the fear of rejection is. And if you know that, 99.999% of human beings will always have a fear of rejection. You are not abnormal. It's not something to overcome. It's not something to mask. It is a human natural response. There are people in the world who just don't have it, and God bless them. But they are not the people that you should be like idolizing as, this is what I should be. So first and foremost, it's normal. The second part of that is like, why do we see the people kind of come into the office and say, hey, I can make 1 million calls, and they get to the phone and then it weighs 1 million pounds and it's all hairy and it looks like a spider and they won't touch it. Look, I'm the same person. Like, I am exactly the same person as that person is. You are no better or no worse. And I think as a leader, one of the things you really want to understand is that you cannot, I think of like coaching, like you can't scream at somebody until they do it. Like it's just never going to work. The fear is real. The outcome is not. Like, the fear of the rejection is typically way worse than the actual outcome. So when I think of rejection and why it's so prevalent in that space is because when rubber hits the road, it's a biological response, not a rationalization. We rationalize much later. We have the fear, it stops us, and then we find all the reasons. Our brain is really good at this, at figuring out ways to like make that fear real and then make that fear less shameful. So we do both of those things at the same time. I'm not a psychologist, so like looking to read all those books, I'm probably wrong, but that's how I experience it.
Well, I think you have a lot of experience, so I think it's very, very valid. So
it's, that's how I see it. That's how I experience it as well. And so, one of the things that I have to, it's like objections in a way. Like I think of my framework as real simple. It's just the screw it framework. For example, I was working with this guy in my sales team, and I was in a local market, and we were in the field. We did field sales. We sold highly commoditized product, telecommunications, and you're pretty much competing against the AT&Ts and the Comcasts
Yeah,
and the Wows and all of those folks, and they're all salespeople. It's kind of like car sales. Like no one wants to see you walking through their front door.
sure.
No one,
Yeah.
not a single person. And we went up to this new territory that had been taken over because our company had done a really bad job like 10 years prior. And all of those people, I don't know if you're from the South, but like they remember you, not you, but they remember the company that did
Sure,
them wrong.
sure.
And you walk in that door and they know, they see that label on your chest and they're like, nope,
Yeah.
get the hell out of here.
Uh-huh.
So we go to this new territory. We knew this as a background. And we go to the store, and it's the first door of the day. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning. The whole street is pretty much closed. It's business street.
Crazy.
And I looked at my partner, my prospective partner. I said, "Hey, do you want to take the first door?" And he was like, "Hell no, not for me." And I felt the same
Yeah,
way. Like underneath the surface, like duck on water. Like my legs
sure.
are like, oh my god,
Sure.
like I'm freaking out. I had convinced this guy to come with me.
Yeah.
I was, yeah, come on, we're gonna go do this. I was talking big game.
Uh-huh.
I was the same guy as walking into the office saying I can make a million
Yeah,
phone calls and then
yeah.
sitting down at the desk. And I looked at the front door, and there's nobody in the store. It was like an antique store. And I just have this mindset that's just screw it. Okay, like the worst they can say is no.
Mhm.
If you're dating, that's not the worst they can say. I'm just gonna put that one out there. But if you're in sales,
Sure.
like the worst they're gonna tell you is no. And I just go screw it. Like in that moment, it's like I'll tell another story. I grew up going to this camp. It's called Athens Y Camp,
Yeah.
a wonderful organization, and my family's been going since my great grandfather.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the oldest boys' camp in America.
That's cool.
And they have these big cliffs on Lake Tallulah. Um, and as a 15-year-old,
Uh-huh.
they take you to the top of these like it's like 80
Sure.
feet. It may be like 60 feet, but it's a
Seems a
1,000
lot
feet.
higher when you're that age.
It's been growing. It's been getting higher and higher
Yeah,
and higher
yeah,
as
of
I get
course.
older. It's 1,000 feet up in the
Uh,
air. For the story's purposes, and you have to jump off. It is really difficult to jump off that cliff.
Sure.
I think the fear of rejection and prospecting is a lot like that fear that your brain goes it's self-protection. Like you just don't want to die.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like you don't want to jump off this cliff and bad things happen. So you have a hard time jumping. But if you just go screw it, just surprise yourself.
Mhm.
It's like when you're if you've ever been on like a gun range, like they tell you surprise yourself when you pull the
Sure.
trigger, because when you intentionally pull the trigger, you tend to jerk.
Yeah.
So I surprise myself. I go, screw it. And I open the door. So I'm in this town. I open the door. I jump off the cliff. And I open the door and I walk in and I go, "Hey, I'm Jeb Blount at XYZ company. The reason I'm here," and I do the whole fanatical prospecting thing. And the lady walks around the corner and goes, "Oh, yeah, no." And then walks back around she goes to the back of the building. And I looked at the guy and he goes, "Oh, that's how it's going to be."
Good.
And I went, "Yep, next
All
door."
right.
And we did that. Oh, and once you start going, screw it, just pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Like, it's momentum.
Agreed.
So the fear of rejection is real.
Yeah.
But once you start to realize that the outcome is never going to be as bad, like I jumped off the cliff and I landed in the water and I was a hero to the guys that I was with. Then I jumped off the cliff 10 times.
Yeah.
It's so much easier once you get past that first one. So one, it's natural, it's real. Don't try and gaslight yourself into believing that it isn't.
Sure.
But then understand that you have power over it if you allow yourself to have power and just surprise yourself and do it.
Yeah. God, I love it. I think it's like there's no better way than to just rip the Band-Aid off and jump in the deep end, or whatever analogy you want to use. I love the story that you said, even with the telecommunications company going in door one. Similar type of story. We'll go to some of these events and conferences, and we're a truckload carrier, or a truckload brokerage, and we go to some of these events with different shippers and food manufacturers and produce companies and stuff like that. And it's interesting because there's a lot of them around, and there's a lot of I don't know, I call them like sharks in the water, where you're going through and like, all right, this guy, I've seen him on LinkedIn, I know who that is, I'm going over. Right. And it's like actually having the ability to go over, or like setting a goal, or setting, okay, by 10 a.m., I need to shake 5 hands. Right.
Yes.
It's 9:31 right now. I need to go shake 5 hands. Right. So like setting a goal or setting that parameter, even in, you were saying with the telecom company, okay, it's 8 a.m. by 9:30 a.m. I have to go in 10 places. After 10 places, then I can, take a break, or I can drive around a little bit, or go get a coffee. But setting some sort of goal to get there, I think is, a huge thing, where people who can set that goal. And now it's not necessarily about that feat, or it's not about, it's like, okay, well, all I'm doing is just, I'm going to go, I get reward myself with a coffee at 9:30 if I get to swing 10 doors. Right. So
Oh yeah.
I love that.
Oh yeah. Look, if it's one, I sometimes there's been days like I'm a very normal person.
Yeah.
I am not a superhero by any means. Some mornings I wake up, it's one call. I'm like, I can make one call this morning. But what I've always found is that, 99% of the time you make that one call and you're like, no one picked up the phone, or you walk in the door and it's locked or whatever.
Sure.
Screw it. I'll do another one. Like it just sort of snowballs from there. So maybe you only do 5, but your goal was 1, so you 5x your goal. So
I love it.
That's that. I love that process that you just laid out.
Yeah, no, it's great. Now with that, like even with the rejection side of it, people getting over it, I think, I think a lot of it is psychological. And how do you, like the most professional or the most successful sales reps that I've ever seen are people that, block out that piece, right? And like, yes, it's real. Rejection is real. I feel it. You feel it. We do this thing on a daily basis. We're still making, calls, throughout a week or what have you. But it is real. And if you can figure out a way to block out that feeling, or even setting something up psychologically to get you to that point, I think can help you overcome that fear of rejection.
Agreed.
Now I'm going to switch over strategy, or, we'll call it like pre-call planning, right? Which I mean, in our industry, it's so fascinating. You have to set a time limit for some of these pre-call planning sessions or stages. I guess what's something on that, like what's something newer reps should actually be doing before a call? And again, obviously every industry is different. We're in freight brokerage. You guys are in sales training. What are some things that you've seen that have had some success with reps? Like what should they be doing before that call?
Well, there's a million ways to skin a cat. Right? You can always prepare. You can over prepare. You can under prepare. I've done both. I've done all. I've been there, done there. Got a T-shirt. I thought I walked into a meeting with a CEO, and I thought I knew everything I could about their business. And the first thing that came out of my mouth, he was like, "Yeah, that's just not what we do." And it was a terrible meeting from there, because I had 5 pages of research sitting next to me, and the first thing I said, he said, "No, that's not what we're doing," and I had to scrap the entire book. Right. I've been in that situation, and I've swung the other way where I just have done nothing. I've been lazy. And I have walked into the meeting and I went, I can just wing this because I'm cocky and I'm cool and I've got charm, and, I'm good at what I do, and I can just be there. And, I've had those conversations where I clearly was way out of my depth, and I've been on both sides of this. There's a couple of things. The boilerplate stuff is like, do your research, know who you're talking to, that kind of stuff. First things first, smile. Like before you walk in the door, before you go into the building, before you get on the Zoom call, before whatever, I just smile. I smile. I practice the smile. I know it sounds psychopathic, but I tell my kids all the time that they get hurt, they're sad, something happens to them, they're mad at me. I say, like, look, the first thing we're going to do here is smile, because smiling has this interesting physiological effect that even if you're upset, or even if you're not in the best mood, if you smile, it releases some dopamine a little bit, some of the feel good things to your neurons. So if you smile, you tend to feel better, just because of the fact that you're smiling, whatever that process is. It makes you feel confident. And so I like to set my shoulders back and smile. I practice that. The other thing is, I like to write on a piece of paper, or wherever I'm taking notes. I like to write. I was taught this by one of our trainers, Brad Adams, who's a fantastic trainer. Is WAIT, W.A.I.T. Wait. It stands for, why am I talking? I love talking. I'm talking right now. It makes me feel good. People love talking, and I love to hear my own voice. I'm not afraid to admit that. I have that, like, whatever that little ego is about myself. But if I'm in a sales conversation, or even just connecting with another human being, like even networking, why am I talking? Ask questions first. So I practice asking questions, even to myself in the car, like on the ride over or right before the Zoom call. I like to write down all the questions I plan on asking. And that's always, pre-call prep. You can do that with research. The things you need to know, the BANT stuff or whatever you want to write down. But I practice those questions. I just ask them out loud. Don't wing your questions. I like to kind of play jazz a little bit, it gets me in trouble because if I don't practice what I'm saying, I fumble through my sentence
Sure.
or I kind of forget what I was going to ask or I get out of order. And it's not that it has to be prescriptive, but just give your tongue, your mouth, your brain the practice of kind of speaking those words in order, because then the next time you do it, it is much more natural. It actually comes across much more natural,
Yeah.
confident. And then as far as like what new reps should be doing before they walk in, if you are a brand new rep, say you're 23 years old, say you're 28 years, say you're 40 years old and it's your first sales job, the first thing I would tell you is you don't have to know it. You don't have to know everything.
Sure.
Your job is to listen. Think therapy. Your job is to listen.
Yeah.
So if you walk in, and I've done it, I love doing it. I'm still going to use my youth to my advantage. I'll walk in and say to a CEO, "Hey, I'm 28 years old. I have had some experience in sales, lots of business experience, but I am not the expert in the things that you do.
Yeah.
I would just love to have a quick masterclass with you about what it is that your business does, because the next time I have a conversation with a CEO like you, I would like to be a little bit more prepared."
Yeah.
I don't think it matters how old you are. I
Well,
think that any CEO wants to talk. They want to hear themselves as much as you want to hear
well, I
yourself.
also feel like anybody in that role, they definitely have, some sort of ego, or they have, some sort of, track record. I also feel like that you just said, I love the acronym you use there, WAIT. Even with, the pre-call planning or the prepping, I think there's a level of transparency that you just said. Hey, listen, I know a little bit about your company, but I would love to learn more. Okay, now they're actually interested. You get the prospect to talk to, you get the client to talk, and they get to, give you a ton of information. Hopefully, as a, seasoned sales rep, you're writing this information down so that you can remember it. But I think there is a level of transparency there where the intent is, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about you guys. I don't know everything today. Can you share something? Right.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of takes their guard down where, yeah, no problem. Here's what this, and this does. Now they trust you. Now, when we get to the decision-making process, they think, oh, well, Jeb, I trust him. He was that, guy that was the younger dude that I felt good about in the meeting, and I'm going to sign the deal.
All of that 5-page thing that I had, the binder that has all the information about their company, I guarantee that CEO does not give a crap about whether or not you have it or not. They do not want to hear how much you know about their company. Sure. It's just never worked.
Sure. One thing now, this is gonna date me a little bit, and I been in the business world for a while, almost 15 years now, and I wanted to ask you a question, because I have a couple different thoughts. Is cold calling dead?
Yes, cold calling dead. If you're not doing it, yeah, I guess so. I don't think cold calling's dead. Yeah. Look, I'm a Gen Zer. Like I'm full Gen Z. I'm the first year of Gen Z, but I don't like talking to people. Sure. Like I have anxiety before I pick up a phone call because genuinely, like, I can do everything on my phone, and it's just the way that I grew up in life. Yeah. But I can tell you this, like when I have conversations with people, it's on the phone. Email just isn't conversation. It's passing each other in the hallway and like hoping the message sticks. When I'm in sales, like the only way for me to have real business conversations is via the phone. And there's a couple reasons why it's not dead. The first is that humans like talking to humans.
Agreed.
The second is that people still pick up the phone. We hear no one picks up the phone anymore. You could give me a list of your prospects right now, list of 25 people. I bet 5 of them would pick up the phone. Just I can guarantee you that, just statistically speaking, across all industries, across what we do, like I can always have a conversation with somebody. Now, what that looks like is different, but you have auto dialers that do all this for you. We don't have that. We're a small team as well. I pick up the phone and call people. People pick up the phone. I pick up the phone. I'm a Gen Z, right? I pick up the phone. Mm-hmm. 2 things that I want to highlight is that we have completely ruined asynchronous communication via AI.
Okay.
Everything's AI. Everything's automated. It's not even AI. It could just be like your HubSpot or whatever it is that you're using. People just know it's not real. Like I know this. I know you're not actually talking to me. You're talking to 500 people when you send that email. Sure. The second thing is attention spans are so small.
Yeah, tiny.
That even if you send the best message in the world, like I read 2 sentences of it, and I don't have time. I don't have space for that. I've got so many.
Who does, right?
Yeah, I'm a captive audience. If you call me, I got to sit there and listen to you.
Sure,
that's the process of it. So those 2 things combined, no, cold calling is not dead. I don't think it really ever will be. And except for one thing that is just unfortunate is the robocalling and the AI calling and all of that. That might kill cold calling, but that's not because the human beings who are calling are bad. It's because there's just unfortunately we live in a technology landscape that's just it's not going the right direction. I don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, even with that, like the cold calling scenario, and I love seeing people, I do think that there are effective strategies on LinkedIn, on social. I do think that there's effective email campaigns, effective email strategies. At the end of the day, I truly believe that humans want to talk to humans. You just said it a few minutes ago. I firmly believe in the power of human connection, right? Anytime that, you have an issue or a challenge and you call, we'll call it, XYZ Airlines. Do you want to talk to a bot or a robot? You don't. You want to talk to somebody who can help you solve a problem. And I'm a firm believer that people want other humans to do that. Now, there are some things. I think DoorDash is pretty sweet, right? Like you can order food from your couch and it'll be delivered in 25 minutes. At the same time, I do think that, a lot of the strategic business conversations are to be had over the phone. And I think that there will always be a place for that. There will always be a place for in-person connection and also, having those strategic business conversations over the phone.
I agree. I'll put this out there. If you heard that conversation and it confirmed for you that cold calling is dead, then all the power to you. Look, I'm a person that, like, if it works and it's stupid, it's not stupid. It works.
Yeah.
So if you are able to be as successful as you want to be and reach your potential, and your business is growing and you don't have any issues with not using the phone, then all the power to you. But if you are hearing that and your business isn't where you want it to be, and you aren't bringing in enough meetings, and you aren't selling what you want to sell,
right,
and you're still thinking cold calling is dead, I would tell you, why are you trying to kill it? I would ask you that question. Why are you trying to kill it? Try it. Maybe it'll work for you.
Right. And I think now people are more open to have conversations, and more people are willing to have a conversation with somebody that is not a robo-dialer or somebody that actually speaks within the first 3 seconds, as opposed to that dead space, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, the answer, like click somebody over, right? So I think that, like, oh yeah, I think somebody's talking on the phone. I can appreciate a good sales pitch, and I'll listen to it for a while, right? Until they, start going super into the scripts and it's not prepared. And it's, anyway, let's go into more of a sales leadership angle. So, with sales leadership, what do most companies get wrong from a sales training perspective, and how do they improve that? And obviously, you don't give us all your secrets, because I know that's what Sales Gravy is based on. But where do they go wrong there? Where do they go wrong in the sales training? How can they improve as a whole?
Yeah, the number one reason that sales training fails is a lack of buy-in from leadership. It doesn't matter what the training is. It doesn't have to be sales training. It could be any kind of training. If your leadership is not bought into it, it will not succeed. When we walk into an organization, one of the ways that I qualify my deals, like one of the ways that when I'm working with a sales team, and I've got buy-in from maybe a manager or a director who wants to help their team succeed, but the VP of sales is completely turning away from it, ignoring it, essentially like deferring decision making to somebody else. I have a spidey sense around these things, and I just know that it's just not going to be more than a 2-month engagement, 3-month engagement, and all the habits are going to go back exactly to where they were before we walked in. People think it's the naysayer salespeople at the top. People think it's the naysayer sales managers. Sure. I will tell you that if a VP of sales or a CEO or senior leadership is not invested in training, it's not worth your money. I mean, just spend. You would be better off, I think, taking all your money that you were going to spend on sales training and put it in a dumpster and then setting it on fire. It would be a better decision than bringing us in and wasting people's time and then not getting anything out of it. So that would be what most companies do wrong when they bring in sales training. How to solve that? One, I don't think that you solve it in terms of there's not strategies or methodologies or ways to like get around that. The first thing is, as a leader, if you're listening to this and you're not interested in sales training, that's okay. But figure out what you can do as a leader that you are interested in that supports your sales team in a real tactical way. I don't think the rah-rah sessions that VP of sales does on like the monthly phone call is going to change anybody's world.
Sure.
So just keep that in mind. Like if you're not bought into it, don't try and buy it. It doesn't make sense for your business. You have to find the solution that you're bought into first as a leader before it'll make any difference, because there's no follow-up afterwards. There's no accountability to the training. There's no change in culture. And then with that, it just the knowledge and the training that a company like Sales Gravy might bring in, or any other company might bring in, just dies on the vine. Again, put your money in a dumpster and set it on fire would have been a better decision.
Yeah, which I'm sure you've had a lot of experience with that, especially with, you go into a situation, VP of sales is jacked to get you guys in there. They're ready to go. And maybe the director who's overseeing a group of other managers isn't really bought in. He thinks he can do it himself and he wants to put his spin on it. Do you get that pretty often?
Yeah, it's usually, if you have the senior leadership involved, the middle will move. And I think that it's not a waste of time.
Got it.
If you have the middle who's bought in, but the senior level that isn't, you might as well not do it. And so typically when we see that, like the middle management area, the directors, the managers, if they're not bought into it, it does suffer. I'm not, sugarcoating that. It will suffer.
Yeah.
The salespeople will not hold everything, and there won't be accountability to 100% of the training.
Sure.
So the way that we kind of move that needle is we have to, and this is like when you bring in a new person to your business, you have to understand what their goals are. If the sales director is not bought into the sales training and they think they can do it better themselves, it's typically because they are unaligned with the mission of the process of bringing in sales training. Like, why did we bring in sales training? If the sales training is brought in their mind to fix their gaps, to fix their ineptness, and they feel maybe threatened by the sales training, that is a misalignment. If you are if you're a senior leader in that space, you and maybe even the sales training team needs to go to him and say, what is it that you think that they're what's the challenge here?
Sure.
Well, what is it that you want to get done? If they are truly not interested in helping their team out, well, that's a different conversation. But I would say 99% of the time, they're not bad people.
Yeah.
They're good people. They have they're well-intentioned. And it just comes down to a conversation around like, this is not here to hurt you. It's here to help. And we want to make sure that we're on the same team here. So what is it? What's your vision of this versus why we were brought in? And when we can align there, that solves the problem 99% of the time. And it's typically like a 30-minute conversation where we just need to hear them. They just need to be real people from you and say like, hey, I don't think that we are that bad of a sales organization. Why are you bringing in a sales trainer to fix us? And the sales VP or the CEO might have not illustrated that well. They might have said, we're bringing in sales training to fix what we're doing. But really they meant we're here to enhance or, just change the mindset a little bit to make things interesting, because we work in business and every day is a new day. Let's just try something new.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think there's a level of that too, where you get, a lot of times you get that successful salesperson and they have a lot of success in the individual contributor role. Then they get bumped to manager, or now they're the sales director. Now they're, directing or leading, 5 or 6 people. They're probably a very good individual contributor, not the best manager or leader. Now they go in and they say, oh, well, just, do it the way I did it. And, they have this, ego, attached to that. And then you get the CEO that comes over and says, hey, listen, we're going to do some sales training. And then it's more of like a shot of like, oh, wait, hold on a second. Like I was the number 1 rep in 2007. Remember me? Like I was President's Club 3 different times, like then you get the kind of the back and forth banter. So yeah, I agree with you. Like if you want to have, sales training within your organization, I think you made a couple different references there about having alignment. And I think that's 100% accurate.
If I was a senior leader, don't promote Michael Jordan.
Right.
Michael Jordan is not a great basketball coach. Because no one's Michael Jordan. You can't be Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan. And if Michael Jordan tries to tell Brian Hastings how to be Michael Jordan, it's just not going to work. That would be my analogy there. And if you do have a Michael Jordan on your team and you want to promote them, you need to make sure that they understand that when they get into that role, they're no longer the Michael Jordan of logistics. They are now, they're now the Steve Kerr.
Yeah. Well, and I think there has to be like a level of intent there too. I can never be Michael Jordan. Number one, I'm not that great at basketball. And number two, I'm like 5'10". So there we go. We, starting point guard for the varsity basketball team, I think is more what we're looking for.
Yeah, right. Backups to the starter, really.
Yeah. So somebody comes in and they're looking for a sales profession, and they're the first couple months into it. What's some advice? What are some things that you would give to a person that maybe is 22 to 27? Maybe they've gone to True Green, Camelon, they've done the door-to-door thing for a while, they've sold some bug spray services, right? So question there, what advice would you give to that younger person as they go into sales, to make their mark and to have the most success possible? And then I do want to ask you one more question about success rate and why people succeed. But first of all, let's hone in on that 22 to 27-year-old that's in the industry and they want to produce more sales.
First and foremost, knowing comes after doing. And there's a lot of us that would rather know everything and then go do. You will not be successful. You won't make very many sales if you are focused on the product, the service, who you're selling to, the ICP, grand strategy, trying to be the best, most knowledgeable, most valuable business advisor out of the gate is a pitfall. And it's not that the aspiration is wrong. It's not that I fault anybody for wanting to be that person. I always want to be the most knowledgeable person about what I'm selling. I think it helps. I don't think it's a detriment. But if you're a new rep, you come out of the field, you've been doing something that was maybe more door to door. You sold Cutco knives, like we have that a lot around here. A lot of people who sold Cutco knives or make the rainbow, vacuums. You've done the hardest job. The hardest job is just getting out there and talking to people. So you've done the hardest job. Now you just need to go talk to people. And that humility of walking in the door with a smile on your face and, hey, I don't know anything about what you do. Could you tell me? Like, if you work in the small business or you're working with the logistics and you're talking to a truck driver, someone who owns like 5 trucks in their fleet, and they're not like a huge business. Maybe they own 1,000 trucks in their fleet. But they started the business. You go, hey, what possessed you to get into this? Why are you here? If you walk in with that, you will start to learn business faster than you can read it.
Sure.
You can't read books. You can read books, but you're not going to take it. It's not going to hit your brain the same way as if you're having a real conversation with somebody and you're going to make mistakes. Like, you're going to say the stupid thing. Yeah. You're going to assume, which you all know what assuming does. It makes an ass out of you and me. You're going to do it. You're going to cut corners sometimes by accident. You're not going to know that you did it. I would just say to that new rep, look, if I'm going to tell you one thing, is that knowing and doing are two separate things, and knowing comes after doing. So start doing it, but with humility, and being coachable in that aspect. But check your ego at the door and just say, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get my teeth knocked in for however long it takes. Yeah. And then eventually it will click. When I was working in telecom, I didn't know anything about telecom. I've been in the sales training world my entire life. I've been in a couple different jobs, mostly tech. I sold a lot of tech in my life. But I sold telecommunications because I just thought it was interesting. What a mistake I made, because it was super interesting and I really loved it. I had such a high going and doing it, but it took me 9 months. It took me 9 months before I could really sell at a high level.
Sure.
And if I had to go back and tell myself something, I'd be like, you're not going to sell this at a high level in month 3. I was trying really hard. Stop trying so hard. Yeah. Just let it come to you, field the ball, and then get it to first base, and eventually you'll start turning double plays, and eventually you'll learn how to swing at the fastball down the middle and hit it out of the park. Yeah. It just comes after time. So give it some space, and be successful as you can. Be as successful as you can, but know that there's going to be a period of time where you're going to have to check your ego and say, this is not my potential. Mm-hmm. It is the road to it. So you're climbing the mountain. You're in the first leg of the mountain. You're not the mountaintop.
I love the way that you say it's the road to it. And I think there's so much, even in our society today, right? Like instant gratification, and I'm guilty of it as well, right? I just mentioned DoorDash, right? That's a hell of an app. You're hungry and you want some food, and it's there in 25 minutes. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to talk to anybody. It's amazing. But I think that in our world today, there's so much instant gratification that if you're going through that tough time where you're, keep on having those rejections and you're able to see that light at the end of the tunnel, or even bottle up those small victories or those those conversations that go like halfway decent and call that a win, I think you'll be better off, moving forward and seeing some of that, success.
You're learning. It's all learning. Like it's genuinely, it is, you're getting the scars that you can refer to when you're later in your career, even if it's 3 months later and someone says something to you and it stumps you, you're going to be less stumped at that point. You're going to go, oh yeah, I remember that one. I'm good to go here. Someone goes, well, your price is too high. Why don't the service of the other competitor is just as good, and I don't know why I would pay this amount. And then you have examples, you have stories you can tell. People love stories, and when people give you objections, start telling stories because they want to listen to you.
I love it. Last question: why do a small amount or a small percentage of sales reps have this level of success? Why do majority of sales reps stay here? And then, obviously I know, I think we both know the answer of the bottom 20%, but why is that? Why do only a certain level of, we'll call it 10, 20% have the most success in sales?
I wish you'd ask me this again in like 15 years. I have a different answer. I'm going to start with, it's hard. Just point blank, it's hard. Yeah. There are people who are top performers and there are people who aren't. And I think there's a role to play for everyone.
Sure.
To move from the 80% to the 20% is probably harder than moving from 19% to the 1%. The reason is it requires a lot of self-awareness.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by self-awareness?
Yeah, I'm gonna say self-awareness is the reason most people stay in 80% versus the 20%. Self-awareness to me in this scenario means you have to be willing to check and to keep yourself accountable to the fact that you aren't reaching the potential that you have inside of you. Yeah. The reason that Michael Phelps is the number one, I just love sports, but Michael Phelps is the number one swimmer in the world is not because he was the most physically gifted. I mean, he truly is physically gifted, but it's not because he was the most physically gifted or the most mentally strong person who's ever existed in the world. There's been better athletes. There's been better swimmers. I'm sure he's been beaten before. Right. Like he's not invincible. So those athletes that reach those top levels, the difference is that when they were at the 80%, when they were the mediocre person, or they were at the cusp of greatness, they knew they weren't there yet. Yeah. And the fact that they knew that is a leap and bound beyond most folks. And I say that in that we love to build worlds for ourselves. We have a narrative that we teach ourselves, that we spin, that we are, it's that, there's a problem over there. I can't do this because of whatever, something else. Yeah. And those things all may be true, but perception is reality. If you make those things your perception, and you lose sight of the fact that you can make changes and that you can, you can play a different game than you're playing right now, just based on thinking a little bit differently. Sure. If you don't have that self-awareness to go, this isn't working, I got to figure something else out, you will stay in the 80%. But if you are willing to be self-aware and say, you know what I'm doing right now ain't working, I'm going to make a change. Those are the people who are successful. Yeah, I love it. And even from the sports analogies, I'm a big baseball guy as well. And it's, if you're a hitter and you haven't gotten a hit in the last 10 at bats, well, I got to change something. What am I doing? Is it mechanics? Is it mindset? Is it mentality? What is it? Same thing with golf, right? I feel like golf is such a great sport to challenge yourself. Where it's like, okay, I hit my 7-iron, 160, right? And knowing how well you hit each club, and knowing, okay, well, I don't drive the ball very well. I'm probably going to hit a 5-iron here so I can keep it in the middle of the fairway. Obviously, that never happens to me. I'm usually like this way, but I think that's a great take on it. I feel like the self-awareness piece of, what am I good at, and where do I excel, and where do I need help? Well, Jeb, I just want to say, thank you very much for coming on the show. That wraps it up for today. For those that are listening, please, go out, subscribe to the show. Make sure that, you follow Jeb on social. If you can, Jeb, tell us where we can find you. Yeah, the best place to reach me is LinkedIn, Jeb Blount Jr. There's Jeb Blount as well. You can reach him. He probably will not be able to get back to your message,
Sure.
but he will do his best. But I'm the taller, better looking
There
one.
you
So
go.
if you look up Jeb Blount, taller, better looking, that's me. Message me, follow me there. Listen to the Sales Gravy podcast if you like this kind of conversation. Brian has an amazing podcast, so like and follow this one if you haven't. Like, follow, share. It really helps shows out like this,
Yeah.
and helps ours as well. So the Sales Gravy podcast, you can find us anywhere, YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. And then, if you're interested in learning more about sales training, I build all of our free resources, the things that sales leaders can use, that sales professionals can use. Go to salesgravy.com/resources. All of those resources are absolutely free. I've got so many more that I'm building. So always go and check that out for content around your sales life and your sales leadership and your sales organization. That's the place you'd want to go to find ideas and ways to improve what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, Jeb, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Brian, you're awesome. And thank you so much for having me on. Y'all, like, follow, listen to this podcast. If you haven't liked this podcast, if you've gotten this far and you're still listening to my voice and you haven't liked it, shame on you. Go and do that.
Yeah. Touche, man. I appreciate it.